Hello everyone, it's Dr. Paul Rose back again with another explanation of research skills suitable for MSc students. And in this presentation we're going to be looking at thought papers, what they are, how we construct one and what goes into them. So first up, what is a thought paper? This is where you think about a particular piece of science, a particular article or paper that you have found or that you might have been given, and you're expected to construct your thoughts and ideas on its content. So the focus of a thought paper is on careful study, analysis and elaboration of the information that's presented within a really limited context, i.e. the particular paper that you have selected or that you have been asked to read. We're not looking at a broad review of the literature, we're focusing very specifically on one particular journal article. And you examine the research by telling the reader of your thought paper what you think is important about it, what we can take that's new from it, and where this research should go in the future. Synthesis of novelty, synthesizing new ideas, new questions, new ways of looking at the research are the key things to take away from reading a thought paper. A really important point to remember is that a thought paper is not just a simple summary. It's not just a description of a paper you have read. At MSc level, we move away from description. We are looking at critique, analysis, evaluation and synthesis. Nor are we doing a literature review. We're not looking across multiple papers to bring together arguments or ideas from the broad sweep of the literature on your topic. We're focused, we're specific, and we're telling the reader what we think about a piece of science. Why does it matter? Where do we think it should go? And what are our new ideas or new meanings that we can take from its content? The likelihood is you're writing a thought paper because you've been asked to do one as part of an assessment. But don't worry, this is probably one of the most helpful things for getting you started on what to include in that thought paper, because the instructions in your assignment will form the basis of what you need to think about. Use those instructions to focus on what you need to critique, what ideas you need to extend, what new meanings you need to come up with. Because the assignment brief or the instructions that you have been given will tell you where to focus, what specific point or specific topic do you need to construct your thought paper around. And therefore you can build a strong narrative into your work based on the instructions in the assignment brief. So if your thought paper is all about the future directions of animal welfare science, and you have been given a paper that is on animal welfare science, you know that you've got to extend your ideas on where research in that field can go in the future based on what you are reading. So your new points, your new meanings, your new messages all focus on extending where we are currently at with animal welfare science and moving it forwards. So your assignment brief is your best friend when it comes to writing a thought paper, because those are the instructions that you should follow that tell you exactly what you need to be thinking about. The content of your thought paper broadly covers these 5 boxes. It should question what the paper you have read is telling the reader, the wider industry, the audience that will engage with it. So think about its meaning, its relevance, why it has been written. Critique that question Critique its meaning, its aims, its reason for being written in the first place. What's good about it? What's challenging about it? What limitations are there? What's unanswered? Even though science aims to answer questions, we often generate more questions from those that we're trying to answer. Think about alternative interpretations or alternative explanations for any results that are presented. How could you explain new science, new methods, new ways of approaching the original research in a way that might lead to different conclusions? You could suggest follow-up experiments or follow-up investigations as you extend the research, and you build your thoughts and ideas on why these are important using the original paper as the evidence for those ideas. And when you come to review methodological changes or improvements to the experimental design, you could think about how these help you develop new questions, develop new hypotheses, and therefore develop new data, new results into the future that really helps bring along that area of science, extend that area of science, and make it more useful and more relevant to a wider scope of people or to more practitioners in industry. So question, critique, think about interpretation, think about follow-up and extension, and think about review and evaluation of the information that you have read in that original paper. Once you've got an idea of what the content should be, you've thought about questions and critique and extensions, it's worthwhile considering the main objectives of a thought paper. And there are usually three of these. The first objective is to give you an area of research that allows you to see where it can go in the future. You're examining what science is currently available, and then you're stretching it. Using your own thoughts and ideas, you're stretching that current paper that you have, thinking about where it will go when other people read it and use it as the basis for their research programs. The second objective is to train you to answer a bigger question. You've taken your original paper and you've considered how could you extend and develop the methods? How could you use an alternative experimental design to iron out some of the challenges in that original paper, or to develop the methods further so any results are more valid, more concrete, or we might have more faith in them. If it's a case study paper, for example, so a case study on a small sample size, how could your research extensions use a larger population across multiple populations or multiple institutions to really extend the validity of that research? And the last objective is that it encourages you to develop your own thoughts on a topic, and it allows you to reflect on the application of this topic to industry. And this is where the synthesis of novelty, your new ideas, your new meaning, your new concepts are really important. Thought papers are all about the novelty of your own expression, of your own concepts and your own ideas. That's why it's called a thought paper. The reader, the marker, the assessor, whoever reads your thought paper wants to know, what do you think? What do you think about the original paper you have read? What do you think about its relevance? What do you think about where it should go? That's the crux of writing a good thought paper, extending your ideas and your thoughts on the science that you have read. So a common question from students when they go to start writing a thought paper is, well, what about other references? And yes, throughout your degree, throughout your academic career, it would have been hammered home to you to read widely and to include citations, but not for a thought paper, because the citation is the original paper that you have read, and it is your critique of that original paper that's the evidence for your ideas. So you substantiate your interpretation, your novelty, your thoughts by explaining why they matter based on the original paper that you have read. So use outside reading really sparingly. Perhaps you might need 1 or 2 other references to support key arguments. Maybe you want to say that other people have used analysis in this manner, which would be suitable for a research extension. Or maybe there is this paper that's done the same experimental design but has found different results. But remember, you're not constructing a literature review. You're examining your own thoughts and ideas, and you're telling the reader what you think is new, what you think is novel, and what you think matters. So you don't need references for that, because you're going back to the original piece of research, your paper that your thought paper is based on, and you're explaining that in the context of what you think and feel about it. So the odd citation is fine, but it should not be a structured literature review like you might write for the introduction of a thesis or general essay. And a word of warning about generative AI programs and this style of academic writing. I would strongly recommend that you avoid any use of generative AI when writing a thought paper. Thoughts are human expressions. Thoughts and emotions are what make us human. You can never get that from an AI chatbot. We also know when work has been written by AI because it doesn't speak with a human voice. It's very easy to spot phraseology that has come from AI chatbots. So please remember, the key fundamental aim of a thought paper is for you to show your thoughts and ideas and novelty, and you simply cannot do that if you use any form of generative AI program. So be prepared for a terrible mark or even a fail grade if you do use AI in a thought paper, because it's not human. It cannot provide thoughts in the same way as you and your own intellect and understanding can. So finally then, where do we start writing our thought paper? How do we get our thoughts down on paper? First up, if this is linked to an assignment, read the brief carefully, and then go away and look across the current literature and use keywords to guide your searching. The best thought papers are those written on the recent literature from 10 to 15 years ago, because this shows you what is current, what has been done based on precedent, and allows you to then be novel, because your novel thoughts and ideas might not yet have been put into practice. Read a couple of ideas first by selecting some articles that interest you. Don't just settle on the very first idea or first article that you come across. Think about doing some research generally into that topic, and then find a paper that really grabs you. And when you have found that paper, do you understand it? Can you follow its narrative? Do you comprehend its meaning? And really importantly, does it interest you? Do you get a gut feeling that you want to know more about this paper? Because if you select a paper that you find boring or one that doesn't interest you, it's going to be very difficult to put thoughts down on paper that are interesting, exciting, informative, and really show your understanding of why this is a relevant piece of science. Take your time, plan ahead, make notes on what's out there, and then settle on one article that you feel you really like, you really understand, and you could really deconstruct in a way that shows your own ideas, thoughts and feelings on what it's done, where it's going, and why it's relevant. I hope this presentation has been useful if you're thinking about writing a thought paper or you have been set one as part of your assessment. Remember to be clear and have clarity in the ideas that you are going to present. Define your narrative and keep it specific to the article that you have selected. In the introduction to your thought paper, make sure you examine and explain the topic that the paper covers. I've used the dreaded word describe there, but what I mean is set out the main ideas of the paper before you start synthesizing your novelty or critically evaluating the paper's relevance. In the main concepts of your thought paper, examine your ideas on what the paper has covered, particularly focusing on methods and data analysis, results and their interpretation. Synthesize your new ideas, give your research extensions. Where should this research go? Tell the reader why there is a particular direction that research should travel in based on what you have read and based on what the authors of your paper have done. And conclude your thought paper with what you have found out, your overall viewpoint on why the paper is useful, on why your thoughts make that area of science more useful, on why your novelty allows wider application to the real world. So we have some clarity, we have an introduction of key topics, we have our main concepts where we synthesize our novelty, we bring out our new ideas, and we conclude our thought paper with what we found and why it matters to the real world. Thank you very much for listening, and good luck with your academic writing.